because the king's command was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fire furnace. So this is another miracle, and essentially the background of this miracle is Daniel's friends were basically three young Jewish men who were knowledgeable, very knowledgeable. They did not obey a command that the king had decreed. The king essentially said, you have to bow down to this idol, and they did not want to worship this. They wanted to worship God, and so they disobeyed that command. And this is the result. The result is you have to basically die in the fiery furnace. And so we know that later on in the story that Jesus had delivered them from the fire. Essentially, nothing happened to them. Not even a hair was burnt, and they were delivered from the fire. So what I want to look at about these three miracles is what's common between them. And what's common really is that the odds were really against them. If you look at the first miracle we talked about, Lazarus, the odds of Lazarus waking up from the dead was pretty much zero. I mean, that has never really happened, and so the people, Mary and Martha, really thought the odds were against them. And in fact, they believed that Jesus could heal them from the sick, because if you look at John chapter 11 verse 32, what Mary says is that, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So, he knew that. So Mary knew that, maybe if Jesus came there while Lazarus was sick, maybe Jesus could have healed him and he would not have died. But once he's dead, the odds are really against them to change that situation. The same thing with the Israelites, right? They were able to go away from Egypt. God delivered them, and they were doing fine. They were walking in the wilderness, and they got to the Red Sea, and they saw the Egyptians pursuing against them. I mean, they had the Egyptians on one side, and the Red Sea on the other side. I mean, they were going to get captured or get killed. And really, the odds, from their viewpoint, is that the odds were against them. They're not going to escape this thing. And the similar thing we find with Daniel's friends. And so let's look into this a little bit more closely, especially the Lazarus story. So if you look at John chapter 10, verse 40, near the end, essentially what we find is that Jesus has been preaching. He's on the east side. He's on the other side of Jordan. And if you look at where Mary, Martha, and Lazarus is, it's in Bethany. So it's about maybe less than a day's walk to get there. So when Mary and Martha, when they found out Lazarus was sick, what do? They went to Jesus and asked him can you come and help Lazarus? And what was Jesus' response? What was his response when Mary and Martha said, can you please help Lazarus, who Jesus knew and loved? This was his response. If you look at John chapter 11, verse 6, he says, so when he heard, so he is basically Jesus. So when Jesus heard that he was sick, basically Lazarus. So when Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, well, what did Jesus do? He went right away to Bethany, right? Nope, that's not what it says. What it says is that he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. So as soon as Jesus got the news that Lazarus being sick, what normal individuals would do is, let's go there. Let's go there quickly. Let's try to heal him and revive him. But what Jesus did was, he heard the news and he decided to stay 2 more days in that place where he was. In fact, if you look at John 11, verse 17, it says, so when Jesus when he came to Bethany, where Mary, Martha, and Lazarus was, so when Jesus came, he found that he had already, which is Lazarus, had already been in the tomb for 4 days. So it's not that he was just sick or he just passed away literally an hour ago. It's been 4 days. It's been 4 days since he passed away. And if you look at John 11, verse 39, Martha says that, Lord, by this time there's a stench, for he's been dead for 4 days. So it's even past, a couple hours, even a day. It's been 4 days since he's been dead. In fact, there's a smell. And that's when you come in. So really what we see is a situation where the odds are really raised against Mary and Martha. At least that's what is perceived. Now, if you look, that pattern is also seen in the Red Sea crossing, right? Because you have Israelites that just not escaped, but delivered from Egypt. And what did God do? If if you look at Exodus 14, verse 4, this is what God did. What God did was, he said, then I will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will pursue them. So God actually hardened Pharaoh's heart, and so the Egyptians essentially went to pursue the Israelites. And so what we see is a pattern of the odds being just stacked up against whether it's Mary and Martha or Israelites. The odds are just really stacked up against it. And the question is why? Why is the odds stacked up against? Why is this pattern starting to emerge? Well, if you look at Exodus 14, that same verse, number 4, the rest of it, here's the reason why. It says, and I will gain honor over Pharaoh, over all his army, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And that is the reason why the odds were stacked up against them. At least that's what they thought. If you look at Lazarus, the story of Lazarus, the same thing sort of occurs. If you look at verse number 4, right? When Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, he said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, the Son of God may be glorified through it. So the odds are, so what I want to sort of show is that the pattern, what we see in Easter miracles is that the odds are really stacked up against these individuals. And how many times have we been in a position where we think this is quite impossible? There's really no way out of this. No real sort of natural way where you can reasonably get out of the situation. It's very difficult. We've been on this situation. But I want the church to know is that when you feel that way, when you're in that situation, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in your study, your university, college, or whatever it is, just remember that's exactly the situation where God really works his miracles. That's where, get ready, because that's where God is really going to work. So what I want the church to know is that to be encouraged, in those situations is that just get ready. That's where God really shines. That's where God really shows his work and glorifies his name. So what should our attitude be? What should we do when we are in this difficult circumstance and we're like, well, what can we do? There's nothing else I can do. What is our attitude? And I want to show you two different attitudes that between these miracles. So now let's look at how Israelites reacted to this circumstance. Israelites reacted to this odds, right? This is how they reacted. So if you look at Exodus 14, verses 12, this is what Israelites said to basically Moses. What they said was, is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians, for it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. So when they were in the circumstance and they realized, wow, we're not going to get out of this, what did they do? They sort of grumbled. In fact, they just came out of the chapter before. They just came out of the 10th plagues. They saw what Jesus was able to do, the great miracle things that he did, and how he can deliver that. Despite that, this one hard circumstance comes before them. The first thing they do is they grumble. Now, when I first read this, I was like, oh, that's pretty foolish. Like if I saw the 10 plagues and, had a circumstance that was pretty difficult right after, I'd be like, no, I think God can handle this. It's not a problem. But the fact of the matter is, we've all been in this situation. Whenever we've been in a difficult situation that we can't figure out, what's the first thing the thought that comes to our mind? Well, if this variable changed, it would have been better. Or if this was a little different, maybe this circumstance would have been, we can work something out, right? That we've all said that. We've all sort of thought about that. And that's sort of a similar thing to what Israelites have sort of said. And so what I want to say is that let's just be careful before we start saying, oh, how foolish of the Israelites to say this, because we've all sort of thought this. Despite the number of times that God has saved us from difficult circumstances, what's the first thought that happens or comes to your mind when you're in a difficult circumstance? You're like, oh, I wish that this is a little different. We could have been, we could have changed it, or the circumstance would have been easier to solve. So that's not the attitude we should have. What is the attitude we should have in difficult circumstances? That's where that last miracle sort of comes into play, where Daniel's friends were brought to the king, and the king essentially asked them, well, who's going to deliver you from this fire? Because I've created this huge fire. The fire's going to consume the human body, and I'm going to throw you into it because you do not worship me. And so who's going to deliver you? And this is the response, and I want us to read this pretty carefully because this is very important. So this is Daniel chapter 3, verses 17 and 18. I'll read this here. So what it says is, this is the response. They say that if that is the case, in other words, if you're going to throw us into the burning furnace, if that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. Interesting, isn't it? It's a different way of looking at a circumstance from what the Israelites looked at from their circumstance. Two different attitudes. One attitude is where, well, this is impossible. Why are we in this situation? I hope this situation never happened. I wish something was changed. To this, the young Jewish men, they're saying that, well, you know what? If God is going to put us in there, He's able to deliver us. But that's not the whole story. The next verse, I think, is the most important, which is 18. It says, but if not, which I feel like those three words are probably the most important words. But if not. In other words, those three young men, they knew that God can deliver them. But they also knew that if they were not delivered, that's not the be all and end all. They were okay with that. And so why is it that in certain circumstances when it's very difficult and you feel like there really is no solution to it and you want God to deliver you from this, and sometimes that answer doesn't come? Why is that? And the reason really comes down to the answer. The answer is in Isaiah 55, verses 8 and 9. What he says is that, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. The fact is that we can't see the big picture. We can ask for wisdom, just like it says in James. We can ask for as much wisdom as we want. However, the fact is that we just can't see the big picture like God can. So everything is going to work for the good. We just can't see the big picture yet. And so this is the attitude we should have when we are in difficult circumstances. Know that God can deliver. He has the power to deliver. But if not, it's okay, because His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. We can't see the big picture. And going through this difficult circumstance, there's a bigger picture that we cannot visualize, we cannot comprehend. So what I hope to sort of show from these three miracles is that a pattern that seems to emerge. The pattern is that God seems to work when the odds are really against you. The perceived odds are really against you. When you think there's no real reasonable solution you can think of, that get ready, because that's when God really likes to work and show you. And the reason why He does that is to show the glory of God. The second point I want to make is that our attitude in the difficult circumstance should not be like the Israelites, although our human nature would want us to act that way. Our attitude should be like these three young Jewish men who said, you know what, God's going to deliver us. But if not, it's His will. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And so I hope this really helps our church. Anytime we're going through some difficult circumstance, just remember these 2 points, and hopefully this encourages you. Well, that was my short message, and I hope this resonates.